Hurricane Ian is a monster storm, and it affected the western coast of Florida in a way that a lot of people never anticipated. And it's very close to home for me because I grew up on the western coast of Florida, and I in fact have family in Bradenton right now. And so I've been paying a lot of attention to what's been going on there. And unfortunately, as someone who's from Florida, I can tell you that this is another reminder in the sense of disaster preparedness that people will often shrug off any actual threat until it's already too late, until it's right on their doorstep. You have to understand that the people of Sanibel who have experienced extreme devastation at this point, never assumed they would see a storm like this actually cause this amount of damage. People in Fort Myers, people in Cape Coral who all decided not to evacuate even though they were told to, have been through storms like this before. And their thought process was, well, we've done this before, we've been told to evacuate before, and we've never actually needed to, so we'll just ride this out and we should be okay. And understand there's an ego and a gusto to Floridians when it comes to facing a storm head on. And now it might not necessarily sound logical, but it is just part of life down there. So people tend to look at it through a different lens. Now, the issue is that this is how most people will face a disaster scenario. They will see a threat, they will understand that it is in fact a threat, but they will assume that because they are who they are, it won't happen to them, or because it hasn't happened in their area before, or nothing that bad ever occurs, that it couldn't possibly get that bad. And unfortunately, a lot of good people are suffering now because of that type of mentality. Now, before you make any judgment on people who should or shouldn't have evacuated or whatever you want to say, understand that there's a lot more into that equation than you would think. Growing up in Florida, I can tell you that during storms of the past, tropical storms as well as hurricanes, there was times where I would have my employer tell me that, in fact, you do have to come to work and we are open. And I would actually have to go to work and drive through a hurricane to get to work and then to just literally serve the public during a massive storm. And of course, that's not where I wanted to be, and that's not exactly what I thought was a good idea at the time, but I had to weigh out my options and say, look, either I go to work and I still have a job, or I say no because I'm in the middle of this storm and I don't have a livelihood or an income any longer. And a lot of people are put in this very difficult situation. They can't afford to evacuate, they don't have anywhere else to go, or they're worried about not having a livelihood to come back to if they do decide to leave. So there's a lot that goes into this equation. But something you have to try to learn from this situation is that when a big disaster comes, you might not have the opportunity to get away from it unless you take the opportunity beforehand, unless you really seize the time that you're given ahead of time. And that's very difficult to do. How do you decide to leave your employment, leave your career, leave your home before something happens if you're being told that it's only a possibility, there's only a small chance? And that's a very difficult situation to be in. And a lot of people will use their normalcy bias to say, well, it's not likely to happen, so I think I'm just going to stay put and I should be fine. And unfortunately, for some people right now, that was a bad gamble. So understand that Sanibel, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, everyone in that area definitely needs help. And there's places like Sarasota, which, you know, is a place I grew up in. There's places like Bradenton where there's lots of damage. And there's still lots of unrealized damage that's occurring through the state right this second. But we have to keep in mind that this hurts regular people. No matter who you are, no matter how you feel, it's the regular people that are suffering the most right this second. And when these people found out that it was too late to evacuate and that the water levels were rising and that they were starting to hide on their roofs to try to escape it, the first thing they did, even though they knew they were supposed to evacuate and even though they knew that this storm could be a big one, the first thing they did was call 911 and ask for help. And of course, at that time, based on the fact that the storm was still active and that the streets were not safe or whatever else you want to say about it, they were told that no one is coming to help you. And that is something that will happen during any large-scale disaster, no matter what it is. So we always have to keep that in mind, and we have to understand that we are in charge of ourselves and our own actions and our own survival, no matter what the situation. And sometimes 911 and emergency services just aren't going to be able to help you. They aren't going to be able to come save you. Now, there are a lot of people out there who will use this situation in a political way and say, you know, well, that's what you get, Florida, right? Because they have a certain ideology that makes them feel like things are justified based on whatever actions they think are, you know, unnecessary being taken by governments and everything else. Understand that no matter how you feel about this situation, no matter how you feel about, you know, that European conflict or any of these scenarios that unfold and how you feel about the governments who deal with whatever is being done in those areas, you know, the regular people are the ones who are suffering. It's not the governments, it's not the people who are in charge. Regular, everyday people are suffering, okay? So quit that talk and don't do that, or else honestly you're a terrible person, because it's not like every single person affected by this storm is going to be in complete disagreement with your ideological stance. So please avoid that. Understand that regular people need our help no matter what's going on at the top. And that being said, please don't rush out to donate to whatever charity might be asking for money right now. Understand that a lot of these giant nonprofits will take donations during times like these because people are willing to help. And that money doesn't always get funneled to the area you think it will be funneled in. So I would hold off until you know for a fact that certain groups are actually boots on the ground helping people out that actually need it right this second. Big giant charities like the American Red Cross, they might actually get there and do something to help the people, but you have to understand that the money doesn't go specifically to a singular cause. It gets distributed to their entire nonprofit and it gets used for whatever they deem necessary. So my suggestion and what I'm asking for is that if you guys can actually let me know in the comments below, if you have charities that you know for a fact are credible, verified, on the ground, helping Floridians right now try to recover from this storm, then please let me know. And you aren't allowed to leave links in the comments section, but I can. So what I'll do is I'll put a pinned comment at the very top of the comments so that everyone who knows of some groups that are actually helping right now can leave those names in the comments, and then I can leave links if we decide that they are obviously worth supporting. So let's try to do that, because I think that everyone wants to do something to help right now, but I'm worried about making a rash decision and then your money not even going where you think it is. So if you guys can help me out with that, I would appreciate it. Let's get that comment chain going down below, and that way I can link some of these charities that we all check out and maybe agree upon and say, yes, these people are actually on the ground making things happen, and that way we can support different groups that are actually doing the work. But at the end of the day, keep in mind that these places, you know, they know that these storms can happen, okay? Just like people in California know that there can be an earthquake, just like people in Missouri know that there can be a tornado, these things just occur, all right? But you have to understand that when you get used to these types of disasters over time, you can have maybe what you would say an unhealthy amount of enthusiasm about your ability to survive it because of how often you've been through it when it hasn't necessarily affected you. And I've talked to friends and family in the area, and most of the people I know and still associate with are doing fine. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not doing okay. So keep all of that in mind. And like I said, this is close to home for me, so I do care about the people who are being affected by this right now. And I do remember being in Florida during these storms and how that felt. And I just want us to try to learn something from this terrible situation and then possibly do something good if we can. So like I said, please leave good, verified, credible charities down below in the pinned comment. Like I said, just leave the name. You can't leave links, but I can. So then I can put a link up afterward. And then we just need to remember that regular people are suffering, guys. Please don't use this for anything else in the sense of your ideological, whatever you want to call it. And don't judge people who didn't evacuate even though they were told to, because there's so many different factors involved there that it's just hard to say what would make somebody have to do something or not, right? So just wanted to mention this, and without anything else to say about it, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.